Are you interested in some spicy new deck tech? Well, here's your host, Capital G!
Peoples of the world, welcome Capital G, bringing you an Erinis Gloom Stalker commander deck. He has a criminal past. But before we get into that, be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel. Also, be sure to come join us on the Dungeons and Cardboard Discord group. So if you're on Discord, come join us on this group. It is free to join, free to play. It's our LGS way from our LGS. Lots of magic, commander, over spell table. We also play lots of Flesh and Blood, Elden Ring, Dungeons and Dragons, and more. And it's just a cool place to hang out. So be sure to come and check that out. But speaking of things we want to check out, we want to check out Erinis Gloomstalker, coming in from the Baldur's Gate set. 3 mana for a 3/3 halfling ranger with Death Touch. That's a green and 2 to cast it. And whenever this attacks, return target land card from our graveyard to the battlefield. That's pretty sweet. Choose a background. So when you're building the deck, you can choose an enchantment with the background subtype. At this stage of the game, exclusive to the Baldur's Gate release, that you can have as a second commander. So I chose Criminal Past as the background. Commander creatures you own have Menace, and this creature gets +X+O, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So the idea, of course, here is that we are going to mill both creatures and lands into our graveyard in order to make Erinis huge, and because it has Death Touch, it's always going to be trading 2 for 1, if it trades at all. So that is also going to wrap us, get us a whole bunch of lands back onto the battlefield from our graveyard, no matter how we get it there. So this particular list is heavily skewed towards creatures and lands. Very few other permanents or spells. Perhaps not the correct balance per se. I'm not a huge fan of blind mill typically, but this is one of the rare cases where it doesn't matter what hits our yard. It's going to pump up our game plan. Let's start with a couple of artifacts. Going to be running the Arc Splitter from New Capenna. This is great for a Death Touch creature. 1 mana to cast, 1 to equip. Equipped creature gains the ability of pay 1, deal 1 damage to target creature that's blocking it. So if somebody gets in front of our commander and they just happen to be bigger, well, just shoot it right down for 1 mana. Yes, please. Blackblade Reforged is our other artifact in the deck, giving the equipped creature +1/+1 for each land we control. Of course, it only costs 3 mana to equip it to our commander, so there we go. That's why it's here. No other mana rocks, no soul ring. We are going soulless on this one. Creatures, 43 creatures. Like I said, we are heavily skewed on the permanent side of things here. Start with the Acolyte of Affliction. Black, green, and 2 for a 2/3 human cleric. It hits the battlefield. We get to put the top 2 cards of our library into our graveyard. Then we may return a permanent card from our graveyard to our hand. Yes. Black's Vexing Pest. It says that other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders we control get +1/+1. There might be a couple incidentals, but don't worry too much about the anthem effect. It's the fact that it gains us 4 life when it dies, or we can cast it as a sorcery. Search for Blacks, which lets us look at the top 5 cards of our library. If there's anything we want to keep in our hand, we can pay the 3 life and keep it in our hand. But then whatever we don't keep goes to our graveyard. Pretty efficient for 4 mana, I think. Brawn, 3/3 trample. And this wants to be in the graveyard. Bad, because as long as this is in the graveyard, and we control a forest, creatures we control have trample. Death Touch and Trample, by the way, are excellent. So let's say our 3/3 commander already has Death Touch. We give it Trample. It blocks a 2/2 creature. We only need to assign 1 damage to the blocking creature in order to kill it. And then the remaining 2 damage trample over in spite of the blocking creature's 2nd point of toughness. It's pretty cool. Doom Whisperer. Just a big beefy flyer with trample, and we can pay 2 life to Surveil 2. Surveil, of course, lets us look at the top 2 cards of our library and toss them in the bin if we want to. And we can activate this as many times as our life total and board state allow. Dryad Arbor. A card I historically don't like. People forget it's a creature, so whenever there's a board wipe, they always forget to remove the Dryad Arbor from the board. They also always forget that it's a creature, so it's 6, so they try to tap it right away for mana, but it's a land and a creature, which means it has summoning sickness. It may as well come into play tapped. But it is a 1/1 creature, and it feeds both halves of our strategy, wanting creatures in the yard and wanting lands in the yard. So this time, it has a spot. Elves of Deep Shadow taps for the black. Eternal Wetness lets us return any card from our graveyard to our hand. Fidea Seer. Tap it to draw a card and reveal it. If it isn't a land, we get to discard it. So if it's a land, we keep it on our hand. If it's not, it hits the bin. That's fine. Both outcomes are favorable. And that's if we're not replacing our draw with something else, and you'll see what I mean shortly. Fiend Artisan. For 2 mana, this does so much work. Gets +1/+1 for each creature card in our graveyard. And we can also pay our choice of a black and green mana as well as X and sacrifice another creature to go get a creature card from our library. Mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield. Filth, of course, we want this in our graveyard to give all of our creatures Swamp Walk. This means as long as our opponents control a swamp, and they likely will, our creatures will be unblockable. Genesis, as long as this is in our graveyard at the beginning of our upkeep, we can pay 3 mana to bring a creature card from our graveyard back to our hand. Golgari Grave Troll. It's 5 mana for a 0/0, but it gets a 1/1 counter for each creature card in our graveyard. But the main event here is the Dredge 6. So Dredge, if you don't recall, is if you would draw a card, you may instead mill 6 cards and bring this back from your graveyard to your hand. So pretty sweet. Works very well with the Fidea here because then you don't have to discard anything else. You tap it, Dredge 6, Golgari Grave Troll, or anything else with Dredge comes right back to your hand. Other examples of Dredge include the Golgari Thug, which has the reminder text here if you want to have a look. It explains it a little better than I do. The Grey Merchant of Asphodel, because Gary wins games. Say it with me now. Gary wins games. Greater Tanuki. It's a 6/5 trampler if we cast it as a creature, or we can channel it for a ramp effect. Channel, of course, being we pay the mana, discard the card from our hand to go get a basic land from our library, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Izoni Thousand-Eyed. When this hits the battlefield, we get a 1/1 black and green insect token for each creature card in our graveyard. We're projected to have a lot of them, so this is going to give us a bunch of insects. We can also sacrifice creatures to gain life and draw a card using the activated ability. Jared is similar in this regard, gets +1/+1 for each creature card in our graveyard. And we can pay 3 mana, sacrifice another creature. Each opponent loses life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. Pretty sweet. You can also sacrifice a swamp and a forest to return this from the graveyard to our hand. So it brings itself back into play for us. Pretty sweet. Running Junji, the Midnight Sky from Kamigawa. 5/5 flyer. When this dies, we can choose to have each opponent discard 2 cards and lose 2 life. Or more likely, we're going to use the second option here. Put a non-dragon creature card from our graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. We lose 2 life. Cruel Harpooner. Just a way to shoot down a flyer. It'll take a look at how many creatures we have in our graveyard, get a power boost equal to the number of creatures in our graveyard, and then this may fight a flying creature. Yes, please. Grozan Tusker has a great cycling ability, so I've always loved using this card in EDH. For 3 mana, we can cycle it away, but before we draw that card, we can search our library for a basic land and put it into our hand. That's Kira the Boundless Sky. Yes, it's still showing me the Japanese text version in my app. Not entirely sure why this won't update to the English version. But it's a 4/4 flyer for 5 mana. It's a dragon. And when it dies, we have our choice of searching our library for 3 land cards, any type of land, and putting them into our hand. Or we can create an XX green spirit token, where X is the number of lands we control. Llanowar Elves for the ramp. Millikin does both the ramp and the self-mill for us. Pretty sweet. Molderhulk. It's a 9 mana creature for a 6/6, but it costs a mana less for each creature card in our graveyard. And when this hits the battlefield, we get to return a land from our graveyard to the battlefield. The Nyx Weaver. Getting our upkeep, mill 2 cards. I can always pay 3 and exile this from play to return a card from our graveyard to our hand if we need it. The Orc Lore Mage. It's a repeatable effect. We can tap it, search our library for any card put into our graveyard. If the card is an instant or a sorcery, you can put a 1/1 counter on the Auric Lore Mage. Spoiler alert, not likely, but still, great value here if we get to activate this once or even twice. The Rampaging Balos. Whenever a land hits the battlefield under our control, we get a 4/4 beast. Just make our board big, beefy, and ready to swing out. Ravenous Chupacabra. Comes down, destroys a creature an opponent controls. Reclamation Stage hits artifacts or enchantments. Steve, the Sakura Tribe Elder. You can sacrifice this to go get a basic, put it onto the battlefield. Shambling Shell. We can sacrifice this, put a 1/1 counter on a creature, ideally our commander, and it also has a dredge of 3, which means anytime we would draw a card, we would mill 3 cards instead, if we had so chosen to. And we get this card right back to our hand. Shigeki, Jukai Visionary. I believe that is the Spanish version that we're seeing, but the English text reads, while it's a play, we pay a green 1 and tap to return this to our hand as a cost. To reveal the top 4 cards of our library, put a land onto the battlefield tapped, and then the rest to our graveyard. So it takes advantage of the many lands that we're going to be running in this deck, as well as filling up our graveyard. So yes, please. It also has a channel ability where you can pay green XX and discard this from our hand to return X non-legendary cards from our graveyard to our hand. Cool. Sidisi, Undead Vizier. It's a 4/6. It has Death Touch and has Exploit, which means we can sacrifice any creature. You can sacrifice Sidisi itself or any other creature that we may have in play at this point to go tutor for a card, put in our hand. Go get any card that we need. Sinister Starfish, taps for a Surveil of 1. I like that. Skull Prophet, we can either tap this for mana or we can tap it to put 2 cards from our library into our graveyard. At the Spring Bloom Druid, when it hits the battlefield, we can sack land. If we do, search for our library for 2 basics, put them onto the battlefield tapped. Stinkweed Imp has a dredge of 5. That's a big dredge. It's a small flyer, but a big dredge once it does get to our yard. Also, whenever this deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. Storev, Defkaren Lich, green, black and 1, 5/4 trample. Pretty sweet. It's a zombie elf wizard. That's a lot of types that are relevant. And whenever this deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, we get to return to our hand a creature that was a creature or a planeswalker card in our graveyard that was not put there this combat. So we'll have our choices, our pick of the litter, basically every time this comes in and hits our opponents. Timeless Witness, 4 mana to bring a card back from our graveyard to our hand. It has Eternalize, so we can actually do this from our graveyard. Eternalize, of course, being that we get a token, if this is in the graveyard, we can pay the Eternalize cost and get a token copy of Timeless Witness that is a 4/4 zombie in addition to everything else. The Tireless Tracker, land hits the battlefield under our control, investigate. So it gives us some clues that we can cash in for cards. Titania, Protector of Argoth. We have a few ways of sacrificing lands and getting these 5/3 green elemental tokens, so yes, please. The Underrealm Lich. If we would draw a card, we get to instead look at the top 3 cards of our library. 1 goes to our hand and the rest into our graveyard. We can also pay 4 life to give this indestructible, so we can actually block all day with this if someone's swinging for a creature that's bigger than, say, 4 power. And lastly, the Vile Entomber. Black and 2 for this 2/2 zombie warlock with Death Touch, which is pretty cool. And when it enters the battlefield, we get to search our library for a card, put it into the graveyard. Whew, lots and lots of creatures. Are you ready for lots and lots of lands? Start with the Ash Barrens, which is got to put itself in the graveyard for us very quickly. We are running 46 lands, by the way. That's in addition to the Dryad Arbor. So 47 total. That's a lot. Not because we necessarily need that many lands, but we want to really maximize the value. Baron Moor, it cycles. So we could cycle this away to draw the card and then get it into play with our commander later. Blast Zone is a great source of removal. It enters the battlefield with a charge counter. So off the hop, we can activate it to blow up anything with a mana value of 1. But we can pay double X and add additional charge counters to Blast Zone in order to hit other specific mana costs. The Bonder's Enclave. 3 mana tap to draw a card. Activate this ability only if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, which our commander will be 99 times out of 100. Boseiju, who endures, of course, perfectly slots in here. We get to use it to blow up an artifact, enchantment, or a non-basic land. And then our commander can bring it back and we can use its mana straight away. Running to all 5 of these from New Capenna, the hideouts. The idea here is that no matter which one we play, it can either get us a forest, a swamp, or in one instance we have the choice of either or. So 2 of them can only get us forests, 2 of them can only get us swamps. One gives us the choice. But any way we look at it, we'll gain that 1 life whenever we play this. Whenever we sacrifice it for the land. There's also the bit that I'm running both Urborg and Yavimaya in here, which means that as long as I've got one of those out, these things can actually tap for mana in response to their own trigger. And this way we don't lose any tempo at all. Cavalry Courtyard, same deal. The Crawling Barrens is a good mana dump here. Pay 4 mana to put 2 1/1 counters on the Barrens. Then we may have it become a 0/0 elemental creature, until end of turn that is still a land. So once we have excessive amounts of mana, we can just dump it all in here and eventually swing with a big land. Deck more Salvage. It has Dredge too, and it's a land that we can bring back with our commander, so we've got options with this card. 11 basic forests. The Gaia Reach Sanitarium, and one of my all-time favorites it's one of my all-time favorite lands, honestly. Each player draws, then discards a card. Not all of our opponents can take advantage of the discarded cards, so it's 100% value for us, whereas our opponents maybe get half the value, generally speaking. The Havengold Laboratory. This is one of the Innistrad reimaginings of the Stranger Things secret lair. In this case, it's a land that taps for a generic. We could pay 4 and tap this to investigate. At the beginning of our end step, if we had sacrificed 3 or more clues in the turn, it can flip into the Havengold Mystery, which is a legendary land that taps for black mana. And whenever this transforms into the Havengold Mystery, we get to return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. I think that's a pretty sweet piece of tech here. Also, when the creature put onto the battlefield with Havengold Mystery leaves the battlefield, this flips back so we can start making more clues. Moving on to a manland from Forgotten Realms, Hive of the Eye Tyrant. As long as we control 2 or more of the lands, this comes into the battlefield tapped. But it does tap for a black mana, and we can pay 4 and turn it into a 3/3 black beholder creature with menace. And whenever this creature attacks, exile a card from the defending player's graveyard. So a little bit of graveyard control for us there. Lair of the Hydra is a much better mana dump. It's green X, and until end of turn, Lair of the Hydra becomes an XX Hydra creature. X cannot be 0. Maestro's Theater. Necroblossom Snarl, because it has the potential of coming in untapped for us and tapping for either of our colors. Obscura Storefront. Reveteer's Outlook. Skemfar Elderhall. When this enters the battlefield tapped, it taps for a green, but it's got a pretty cool activation. Black, green, and 2, and tap this. So 6 lands in total. That seems like a lot, but it's a nice little back pocket option to have up to 1 target creature that we don't control get -2/-2 until end of turn. And it also gives us 2 green Elf Warrior creature tokens. It's a nice little backdoor option for us here. Zvogtos, the Restless Tomb. I've never learned how to pronounce this card, but I used to play it a lot. It taps for a colorless, but we can pay 5 mana into it, and until end of turn, it becomes a black and green plant zombie creature with power and toughness equal to the number of creatures in our graveyard. 11 Swamps. Takenuma, Abandoned Mire, which we can channel to mill 3 cards and then return a creature or planeswalker from our graveyard to our hand. The ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature we control. Very sweet. Tranquil Thicket, because we could cycle it away. There's Urborg, as I've mentioned, turning everything into swamps. Woodland Chasm, it's a swamp and a forest. And it enters the battlefield tap, but it's a swamp and a forest. And lastly, Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, to turn all of our lands into forest in addition to their other types. 46 lands is a lot, but we're going to get a lot of work out of them. 1 Planeswalker in the deck, Nissa of Shadowed Bows. Green, black, and 2, comes in with 4 loyalty. but whenever a land enters the battlefield under control, gets an additional loyalty. We can +1 and untap a land we control to have it become a 3/3 elemental creature with haste and menace. Or we can -5 and put a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control onto the battlefield from our hand or graveyard, and with 2+1/+1 counters. So it gives us a recursion effect, which is pretty sweet, and because we're going to have lots of lands, we should be able to get pretty much anything back with this. Sorceries, we are running quite a few. We've got 6 here. With Buried Alive, search our library for the 3 creatures, put them into the graveyard, then shuffle. Dread Return, we could, before mana, bring a creature back from our graveyard to the battlefield, or we could flash it back from our graveyard by sacrificing 3 creatures. Even better if those things just happen to be tokens. Running the Exsanguinate here, again, we're going to have a lot of lands, so Exsanguinate is going to put in some work for us. Rise of the Dark Realms, just us ourselves, we're going to have a lot of creatures in the graveyard. So Rise of the Dark Realms should be game winning for us. Sylvan Scrying to go get whatever land we need when we need it. And lastly, the Unmarked Grave. Lets us search our library for a non-legendary card, puts it into the graveyard. And that brings us to the end of this deck. It is Erinis, Gloom, Stalker, along with Criminal Past. Hope you all enjoyed that one. I find that the background commanders are quite challenging because oftentimes you're trying to mix and match and marry 2 completely different mechanics together into a single deck. And you have to work to find the common ground between the 2 cards. Admittingly, Erinis and Criminal Past, both wanting to have things in the graveyard, made that fairly easy, but quite a few combinations are quite challenging, in fact. So I'm not going to be doing too many of these. I do have one other background deck that I want to show off. I'll try to have that ready for you sometime later in the week. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Hope you all enjoyed pre-release this past weekend. I did not get a chance to go, but definitely leave some of your stories from pre-release in the comments. I would love to hear them, and we will catch you again next time.